Good morning. When I was asked to do this, I wasn't told there were going to be quite this many people in the room. So there are quite a few of you in the room who I do know, though. There are people who've been suppliers, there's some customers, and there's many people that I've worked with. And all the people in the room who do know me a little bit will know that I'm prone to getting on my soapbox about one or two things. And that's what I'm going to do very briefly this morning. So life's not always fair, and we're great as an industry at moaning. And there are many times when I sit and listen to people, and we've always got something to say, and we've always got something to talk about. So there's three soapboxes that I'm going to touch on, which hopefully touch a nerve with all of you. The Agency Worker Directive, the Apprentice Levy, and attracting talent. We've heard a lot about attracting talent. We've heard a lot about how exciting our industry is. It's been quite inspiring listening to some of the things that people have spoken about. But those are three things that quite clearly resonate with everyone in the room. I'm going to touch on one of them in more detail than the others and work my way through. So, to start with, I'm going to ask you all a question. Now, before you all start pressing the button, so specifically car drivers, you might have an HGV license, but as a car driver, do you believe you are in the top half of car drivers in the country or the bottom half? So if you believe you're in the top half, if you could press 1, and then the bottom half, press 2. If you could vote now. Now, unlike everybody else, I'm going to come back to the answers a bit later. So we should have another question. So a couple of key bits here. Not whether it was your fault or not is the first thing. But how many of you in the last 12 months, whilst driving a car, have been involved in an incident? And I'm told that the word is incident, not accident. How many of you have been involved in an incident in the last 12 months, including at slow speed? And I will make a confession. I reversed into my garage earlier this year, which, given it's a great big piece of stone and sticks out the side of my house, you would have thought wasn't possible. Given I also have reversing sensors on my car, you would have thought it wasn't possible, and I'm still blaming my father-in-law for blocking where I normally park. So if you have been involved in an incident, might not have been your fault, in the last 12 months, including at low speed, yes, 1, and no, 2. If you could vote now. Thank you. And again, we'll come back to the answers a little later. So the Agency Worker Directive. I think a lot of you will be familiar with the Agency Worker Directive. It was there to protect agency workers. And the reason I'm raising this is because of the challenge that we have as an industry when it comes to training and investing money and time in training and developing people. I was driving up the A46 last autumn, and where the A46 crosses the A52, there's a nice Shell station. I stopped there near Bingham, if any of you know it. And I went in to do whatever I was doing, and one of our drivers was there, called Billy. And I said, "Oh, hello." He said, "Oh, hello. What are you doing?" "Oh, just stopping for a drink." "Are you?" "Yep, I'm stopping for a drink as well." "Well, I'll buy you a coffee for you." "Oh, lovely." So we had a bit of a chat. And he said, "I'm really surprised you bought me a coffee." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Have you not heard? I've left." I said, "Oh, right." He then said I couldn't claim that back on expenses on the grounds that he'd left. I said, "But that's our truck outside." He said, Yeah, I'm working for the agency now." "Why are you working for the agency?" "Well, I get paid more working for them doing the same job that I used to do when I worked for you." So we had a bit of a chat, and fundamentally he'd left the business because he could get paid more working for the agency than he did working for us as an employer with all the benefits that we offer. And that's actually because the Agency Worker Directive, yes, it protects employees and agency workers, but it's created a situation where, in my opinion, and those of you who also know me will know that my opinions are often wrong, and I'm always happy to say I'm wrong as well, but in my opinion, that's created a situation where some people who you have trained, who you've invested time and money in, are leaving to go and get paid a few quid more working for an agency with less security and all those things. So for me, the Agency Worker Directive works great, but it only works in one direction, and I would just leave you all with that thought. The apprentice levy. A great idea. It's fantastic that we're all being encouraged via the tax system to provide apprentices, and that is a good thing. I don't dispute that. The bill for my business, when that kicks in, is going to be £200,000 a year. So that's £200,000 we're going to pay next year. If you take the profitability, because I'm not open to declaring my profit in front of customers and competitors, if you take the average of the top 100 from the MT, the average profit in 2015 was 3.17%. So for me to stand still, based on an average business in our sector, we need to grow by £6.3 million next year to cover the cost of the apprentice levy. So I did a bit of research, and I was actually sat on my living room floor. We have got seats, but I do like sitting on the floor. So I was sat on the floor, and I Googled apprenticeships, and I got sent to this website. I thought, great, there's a really useful tool in there. I put in my postcode, and I live in the Golden Triangle, as I'm sure many of you do. I live, I'm never actually sure where the Golden Triangle is, but I live near Milton Keynes, not far from Daventry, just off the A5 near Towcester. And we're not going to get any more specific in case any of you start stalking me. I put a 5-mile radius in from my home, and I said, I'll do any role at all. And lots of jobs came up. 6 in administration for a variety of businesses. None of them were distribution. There was one recruitment consultant apprenticeship, which shocked me. 2 chefs, 4 hairdressers, 5 plumbers and engineers. One of them was in our sector. 4 nursery assistants, and 1 landscape gardener. So those are apprenticeships that, for somebody who lives relatively close to a number of large distribution centres in the UK, those are apprenticeships within a 5-mile radius of my home. So, 83% of you are modest. 83% of you believe you're in the top half of car drivers. And we've got the next one. And 22% of you have had an accident. I'm quickly running some numbers in my head. 22% of you have had an accident in the last 12 months, and yet 83% of you reckon you're in the top. So what are the bottom lot like if those are the stats that we're getting in a very silly little couple of questions? And the reason I raise it is our industry, and a lot of what we've spoken about today is drivers, but it's not just about drivers. But when you talk specifically about drivers, we reckon we're good drivers collectively in this room, and yet we've had a fair proportion of accidents. It is a skilled job, and it's fantastic that Microlise are supporting and sponsoring and recognising high achievers in our sector. Driving is a very, very skilled job, and yet where we are in terms of funding for apprenticeships is not as far as I believe we should be. So you've got the ability to go and get an apprenticeship if you live near me in a variety of things, but not our sector. Yet I'm going to get charged next year £200,000 in tax to try and encourage me to have an apprentice. Doesn't make any sense to me. Some of our industry bodies, and some have spoken today, and I fully agree with what Kevin said in particular. They're just some of our industry bodies. There are many other industry bodies that represent us. as distribution and logistics experts. One of the questions I was going to ask you, and I'm going to take a quick straw poll. How many of you, this might work, stick your hand in the air on this one. How many of your businesses that you work for are a member of more than one industry body? So many of you are working for a business that is a member of multiple industry bodies. Life's not fair. That's really what I started with. But my challenge to all of us is we can actually deal with it. How many of you, when you get a questionnaire or a letter or some correspondence from one of those industry bodies that you're a member of, actually don't do anything with it? I'm not going to ask you to do a show of hands on that. But I know, talking to the people in those industry bodies, and a couple are nodding at me, they don't always get a swift, timely or detailed response. And yet they're there to help us. They're there to address the challenges that we have as a sector with government. How often do you respond to those requests? We try to respond to every single one. I'm sure we don't. There can be quite a lot. They can be quite time consuming. If you spent as much time responding to the requests for information as you did moaning about some of the things that we face as a sector, how much better would our industry bodies be, and how much more informed by us would they be in order to tackle the issues that we have? My challenge to the industry bodies, and it was great to hear Kevin talking about it, is I've highlighted 3 issues that are important to me. The apprentice levy is one that I'm particularly angry and frustrated by. Given we have all these industry bodies and they're all talking to government, and one of the things that's come across from a variety of the conversations and presentations today is there are many, many great things going on in our sector. It's incredibly exciting, it is dynamic, and there's many people who've stood up here today who've actually been quite inspirational for me. But if you've got multiple people going to government, it's great to hear that you guys are meeting. Is the message coming out from this collective a single message, and are the messages clear? Or have we got lots of people nipping around the edges and having little sound bites here, there and everywhere, when actually we need one collective voice on certain very, very key issues that apply to all of us? So, as members of those organisations, should we also be demanding more of our industry bodies? Should we be clearer when we talk to our industry bodies about our expectation of them, our expectation that they should get together and have a single voice on key issues? A rhetorical question, but one I'd ask you all to think about. So life's not fair, but we can deal with it. There's a lot of, as I say, great ideas, great people, and an awful lot of enthusiasm, and you've really picked that up today as you've sat with this and listened through the presentations. We can all influence that. You can influence that by challenging our industry bodies, our trade organisations, and asking them to raise the right issues. I'd also ask you all to challenge them harder on why we have multiple people raising the same issue at government, rather than going with one very clear and decisive voice. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nick. Couple here. Customer pressure and the reality of competitors buying businesses doesn't put any value back. What are your views on that?
That sounds like a complicated question.
It is, isn't it? Customer pressure and the reality of competitors buying business doesn't put any value back. Views?
My views are, if you're running a business, you have a choice as to whether you make money or not. And if you're choosing to, I think if I'm understanding the question right, if you are doing things that don't make a margin, don't give you a contribution, then that's your choice. But it's a very short way to exist in our sector. Margins are tight. You can't do things below a contribution.
And this is from me. What would be your advice to everybody in this room about delivering profit, value, and excellence? Now, those are 3 really difficult things. Come on, you must have a mantra. You're a man of mantras. Profit, value, excellence.
Profit, value, excellence. Geez. Am I allowed to punch you? That's a really difficult question. I think they're all interlinked.
Yeah.
You have to recognise that, and our little ditty there, listening, responding, delivering, is very cheesy, but my daughter and I came up with that whilst walking through London when she was 5. And I wasn't listening to her, and I wasn't responding. And it's about doing that with your customers, with your suppliers, and with your colleagues. And I think if you get those 3 things right, then you've got a good chance. Again,
and isn't it about being the best you can in everything you do, and then the money would come automatically?
Not necessarily. You have to be pragmatic. You could be the best you can at lots of things, but if you focus too heavily on one thing, you can lose something somewhere else. So I think, yes, expecting excellence is right. Striving for it is right. But you do have to be pragmatic. I think I managed to avoid answering any of your questions properly.
Nick, thank you very much indeed.